today I'm going to cover Google's entry into the social media market with Google+. It wasn't their first entry into social media. They had dabbled before, and they'd had a bit of success with Orkut, especially in Brazil. But this was the first time they went all in on and invested a lot. And the reason is in 2011, they decided that there was a major threat to their existing revenue streams. So today I'm going to cover what was that threat, what did Google end up choosing, and I'm going to show you a bit of my experience as to why I think they weren't able to ultimately be successful. Spoiler alert. So Google never wanted a social media site as a source of revenue. I don't think there was any ads on Google+. They were more concerned about protecting their existing revenue streams. So let's have a look at what those revenue streams are. It's all about advertising. And there's two in particular sources of ad revenue that I want to look at today. One is search ads. And here I've got two different search ads. And one of them is much more valuable than the other. If you have a look here, when someone searched for the Canon G7X, they're probably looking to buy it. So if Amazon puts an ad and you click on that and you get out your credit card and buy it, that's going to be really valuable to Amazon. So it's going to be very lucrative for Google. This could be threatened from social media. Now, I understand now in 2020, it's a bit different looking back, but at the time it seemed that what would happen if rather than search on Google, you could go to Facebook and say like, hey, what did my friends say about this camera? Which of my friends have bought it? What reviews are they, or what have they said about it? Or maybe you could just broadcast an open question. Hey guys, I'm looking for a camera, what should I get? And then Facebook would be able to list those ads. And that could be a real threat. And if Facebook was able to do that, it'd be too late for Google. You know, they didn't have a social media presence, so they could have their revenue devastated. So another big source of revenue is the Google Display Network. Here is an example where Google is paying Reddit to put these ads. The ad that's run by Google is here in the bottom right in that sort of black square. The thing is, website owners aren't tied in at all with Google. They're going to accept whichever ads are going to pay them the most. What if Facebook could use data that they know about their users to produce much better ads? And then therefore they could pay much more than Google and win over all the business. And Google wouldn't be able to compete because they don't have any social media presence. So those were the two threats which Google really woke up to in 2011 and decided that they had to go all in. I think they ended up spending about $1 billion creating Google+, and it never had any direct revenue. So it's kind of incredible. So now we know Google+ was not there to solve a user need. Instead, it was there to solve a strategic need. But Google still needed to decide what value was it going to add to the user. They could do something similar to Twitter, where my understanding of Twitter, and you can tell me later if it's not quite right, is that you just follow people and you can get their content. They don't need to add you back. And then there's the Facebook model, where if I add someone, I don't get to see any of their content until they add me back, and then we've got a two-way link formed. Which of these models was Google going to do? So, of course, they did focus groups. Now, with focus groups, if you ask people, do you want a hot drink? Everyone's going to be like, yeah, sure, I'd love a hot drink. If you ask them, do you want a cold drink? They'll say, yeah, I want a cold drink. The answer is not to give them a cup full of coffee and then pour in half a cup of cold Coca-Cola, right? That doesn't produce something that anyone wants. And as we covered in session one, strategy is about choices, what to do, and importantly, what not to do. So when the focus group said, hey, I want more control over who gets to see my content. So if I go out drinking, I don't necessarily want my boss to be able to see that, big night on the town. If I go to the beach and I'm wearing my swimsuit, I don't necessarily want everyone to see that. I want to be able to control. So Google came up with this solution. This is Vic Gundotra. He was the senior vice president of social at Google. And he came up with this thing called circles, which I'm not going to explain because it's far too complicated for me to explain in this sort of time frame. But let's just say users also found it quite complicated, and we as employees were really confused too as to when things would work under different circumstances, and it was a big, big mess. So here is Google's model. They wanted to give you everything. They wanted it to be both the Twitter model and the Facebook model and a whole bunch more control. How did users respond? Well, users found out that they couldn't actually message their friends, or if they posted anything, none of their friends saw it. So they ended up using it more similar to Twitter, where there were a few content creators, and they had a bit of success. They had some big content creators, and then some people love following content on that. But remember, Vic had staked his whole reputation on this circles idea, was his idea, and so he never wanted to turn around and admit, like, hey, that got us to where we need to go, but maybe we should ditch it now. And so with no leadership at the top, it was a very interesting experience. So a lot of people, like including me, wanted to fix what was going on, but we all had different ideas about how to fix this product. A big project is in some ways a bit like a large boat. It's sort of hard to turn around, and it's impossible to turn if half the people want to go one way and half the people are trying to go the other way. And that is ultimately why Google Plus never really changed. We added features, but it never changed the core. Another big part that was very interesting was the culture at Google. What makes Google search so much better than Bing? What makes Gmail better than Hotmail? How was Google able to bring all this data together and put it into Maps and make this amazing product? How was Google able to fix all of YouTube's infrastructure problems the moment that they were acquired, or within a few months? Because they're amazing at software engineering. But remember, this means that employees want to work on cool software engineering things. They don't necessarily want to have to work on tricky, fundamental issues that are very sort of, it's hard to get any traction. It's hard to sort of work across teams. Why do that when you can get promoted by adding features? An interesting thing to note at such a big company like Google was even if Google Plus wasn't successful, the employees ended up being successful. So at a small startup, people threw all the rules away because they realize that if the company goes bust, they're not in a good position. But at Google, no one really ended up worrying too much about that. They just wanted to add features, add more stuff to this product that already had a lot of stuff going on. And the Google Plus's success, that was someone else's problem to deal with. And those of us who wanted to change ended up in this situation where we didn't have authority. And you want to change something that would work on one team, but that would conflict with another team, and in the end, you got nowhere. So it was an interesting experience, to say the least. So, what were the take-home points here? Strategy is important, and it's really important to think through what your strategy is going to be before you start building things. We all want to just build things, right? We all just want to get our teeth stuck into things and produce stuff. But once you've done that, those early decisions are somewhat set in stone, and they're difficult to change. A product like that boat has a sort of direction and life of its own. It's very important when you're thinking about culture, when you're thinking about strategy, to take culture into account and incentive structures. What you can do at one company might not be possible at another company. Something that's seemingly easy to change might be actually very difficult in practice. Thanks so much to Anna, Chris, Marco, and Shin for helping me out. They took a look at my presentation, gave me some tips, so hopefully it's improved a little bit. Do I take questions now?
Yeah. Thank you.